So today's lesson deals with Theseus, a Greek myth. And we have King Aegeus, who on a trip to Corinth meets Princess Ethra, and they get secretly married. And Aegeus tells Ethra if she has a son to keep his father's identity hidden, because Aegeus is afraid his nephew might kill him because his oldest nephew wants the throne of Athens. So Aegeus suggests that if she has a son, tell that son that Poseidon is the father. So she does have a son. She names him Theseus, and when he's 14, she tells him to move a huge rock. And underneath that huge rock is a sword with a snake inlay and a pair of sandals. And she gives them to him and tells him, "Your father is the king of Athens. Go find him." So he gathers up, and on his quest to see his father, we know that quests aren't easy. First, he meets a giant named Sinus, who tends to bend pine trees, tie travelers by their arms to the trees and let them go. And what goes around comes around. Theseus does the same to him. Then he killed a monstrous sow. And then the third person he has to defeat is Procrustes the innkeeper, who would either stretch travelers on his bed or the rack, or he would cut off their feet to make them fit the bed. Well, Procrustes first cuts off his feet because Procrustes is too long for the bed. Then he cuts off his head, and then he eventually just wraps up his body in the blanket and tosses his body into the sea. So he makes it on the way to Athens, and when he gets to Athens, Medea, who is the present wife of Aegeus, tries to poison Theseus with a cup of wine and with wolfbane in it. And Aegeus notices Theseus because of the snake pattern on the sword and knocks the cup from Medea's hand. She disappears into a magical cloud, and then Aegeus proclaims that Theseus is his son and heir and gets Ethra to come to Athens. Well, needless to say, Aegeus' nephews are not happy, and the next day they ambush Theseus on his way to the temple. Theseus kills all of Aegeus' nephews. Now, the Athenians weren't happy with Theseus' behavior, and so they suggested he be sent to the island of Crete to be devoured by the Minotaur, since the Cretans had requested every 9 years that 7 boys and 7 girls are sent from Athens to Crete to be devoured in the labyrinth by the Minotaur. So Theseus is glad for the challenge. He'll go, and he hopes to kill the Minotaur and free the Athenians from this tribute that they had to do. And Theseus says, if I win, if I kill the Minotaur, I'll hoist black sails. I'll fly white sails, if I'm successful. But if he is killed, the boat will fly black sails. So on his way to Crete, he prays to Aphrodite, and Aphrodite helps by making King Minos' daughter, Ariadne, fall in love with Theseus. She frees Theseus from prison and helps him plan how to kill the Minotaur. She tells him that the Minotaur only sleeps for 1 hour a day out of 24, and that he sleeps in the labyrinth. So she gives him a magical ball of thread given to her by Daedalus, who built the labyrinth, and he ties it to the entrance and throws it into the labyrinth, and it unwinds until it gets to the middle where the Minotaur is sleeping. And when Theseus goes in there, he cuts off his head, and he and the other prisoners from Athens escape on ships, and the Cretan ships give chase, but Theseus and his friends bored holes into the ships, so the Cretan ships sank. So Theseus, Ariadne, and all the Athenians land on the island of Naxos, and while on Naxos, Dionysus sees Ariadne and wants to marry her. So Dionysus says this to Theseus. He doesn't want to offend a god. So he and the Athenians take off from Naxos and leave Ariadne behind. And at first Ariadne is upset, but when Dionysus offers her a cup of wine, and she realizes, I'd rather be married to a god than a mortal, she's more than happy to do that. And Theseus, in his rush to get off of Naxos, forgets to change the sails from black to white. And Aegeus, who's waiting on a cliff, sees the black sails and thinks that Theseus is dead. So he jumps off a cliff and into the sea, killing himself. And now one of the things about myths is that we learn about the origins of things. So we have the name, the Aegean Sea, named after Aegeus. Now, Theseus gets back to Athens, and since he's the heir, he becomes the new king of Athens. And we got to see Theseus' strength in that he, kills all Procrustes and the wild sow in the beginning. But now we get to see his wisdom because he makes peace with the Cretans. And he eventually does defeat the Amazons who come and try and fight the Athenians. So we get to see Theseus has brains, but he also has brawn. And then, when he's king of Athens, his friend Pirithous wants to marry Persephone. And Persephone is already married to Hades, the god of the underworld. And Theseus is like, are you out of your mind, Pirithous? Why would you want to marry a goddess? She's already married to Hades, but she can't have living children with the king of the dead. So Pirithous thinks that she's unhappy, and Pirithous says to Theseus, hey, aren't you the bravest king alive? Help me. So Theseus does, and they enter the underworld, and the gate is guarded by the three-headed dog Cerberus. So they feed the dog 3 cakes dipped in poppy juice that put it to sleep. And they go into the underworld, and they are confronted by Hades. And Theseus, his vanity going to his head, being the king of Athens, thinking how great he is, tells Hades that Persephone is too good for you and she should be married to Pirithous. And Hades kind of admits that she's not happy there, but please, why don't you guys sit down on this bench? And Theseus and Pirithous sit down on this magical bench that they become attached to. And Hades takes advantage of Theseus' vanity and says, you know what, you guys are going to be stuck here forever. And he has the Furies of the underworld whip them. He has snakes sting them. And then Cerberus wakes up and gnaws at their fingers and toes. And Pirithous and Theseus are stuck in the underworld forever. So what we learn from this Greek myth is the origins of things, the Aegean Sea. The other thing that we learn about is after Dionysus was married to Ariadne, his wedding present to her was a star constellation in the night sky, the Northern Coronet. So we also get to learn about the origins of the naming of the seas, some of the constellations, but we also see that quests, in a sense, sometimes people get vain from these different quests, and we saw that with Theseus. He became this great king, and he thought he was the bravest king alive, and then he thought he could take on the gods and defeat Hades in the underworld, but in the end, he ended up losing his life. He was stuck in the bench in the underworld forever.